name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. In 1911, Scott Joplin, the famous performer, piano performer, and writer of music that he introduced called ragtime, wrote his only classical piece. It was an opera called Treemonisha. Interestingly, though he finished that work in 1911, it had its first performance in 1972. And it won all kinds of accolades, including the Pulitzer Prize, which he won posthumously, a very rare occasion. This particular opera is a story, a mythical story of hope and of righteousness, and how to apply righteousness. At the critical point in the story, Treemonisha, a young girl who was in a community, had been abducted by two conjurers who did not like her comments about their evilness, and they had planned to kill her. She was rescued by a member of the community she lived in and taken back, and the community got the two villains and were prepared to kill them when she steps in and says that should not happen. And there's a song sung by the man who had rescued her called "Wrong is Never Right." And she recommends, after that song, after that aria, that they be forgiven and allowed to go their way. The community reluctantly follows her advice, and one of the men repents and becomes part of the community, but the other redoubles down on his evilness and runs away. The basic concept of the story is simple but very profound. Do good because it is good. Do good because it is good and it's not wrong. And wrong can never be right. I want you to think about that for a minute, because it's a very simplistic phrase. It's a very simplistic attitude or idea. But the fact of the matter is, it's so right. It's right. Do right because it is right. The question, of course, is what is right? Pilate asked Jesus, what is the truth? And Jesus' answer primarily has been all his life and to this day, I am the truth. You will know right through me. Ever since we were created, at least as the story tells us in the Bible, we were infused with right, knowing wrong. It was one of the things that we were not supposed to know necessarily, but we did. And we came to know it. We know the difference between right and wrong in our hearts. It's in our bones. Let me give you a little story. Imagine, if you would, that you have a little daughter or granddaughter, 2 years old, and she has an older brother, he's about 3. And you've taken them in the park and you've had a lot of fun, and there's an ice cream truck there. So you go over and you get an ice cream cone, you come over and give it to the little girl, and while you go back to get an ice cream cone for the little boy, the older brother takes the ice cream cone from his little sister. You can imagine what happens. The little girl is either going to start crying, she may hit the little boy, who knows what she's going to do, but she knows one thing: she's been violated. Now, it's not because she has a high sense of morality, has learned it at that age. It's innate in her to know that it is wrong to have that taken from her. When you come back with the ice cream cone for the little boy, he will equally know that he has done wrong. You don't have to tell him. And when you ask him, why did you do that? You know exactly what he's going to say. I don't know. He won't say, oh, it was the right thing to do, because he knows it's not. He will give apology maybe, but the best he can do is say, I don't know. And that's the problem. When we get caught doing wrong, we know we've been wrong. And normally we will say, I don't know why I did that. We might try to give excuse, but in our hearts we know, no. We know when it's wrong. And we know that wrong is never right. And to do the right thing feels better than doing the wrong thing. In the 50s of the first century of our common era, Paul wrote to some people he didn't know, the Romans. And in this morning's section of that letter to the Romans, he broaches this very subject. You know, that little phrase that looked kind of strange as you read it, or as Laura read it, or as Catherine read it, or whatever was in your mind when you said, you don't have to go to heaven to find out what is good. You don't have to go to hell to find out the consequences of bad things. It is near to you. Paul was quoting the 30th chapter of Deuteronomy, in which God makes known to us by the connecting to us with what he built into us, the sense of knowing right and wrong, innately, in our bones, in our very being. We don't have to go looking for it. It's near us. It's in us. It's connected to us, and God's connecting to us, and particularly in Jesus Christ. And Paul builds the case, he does this morning, for knowing Jesus, because he says there's a rule that the Jews had, and it worked to an extent, I suppose, but the real truth is you don't need rules to know what to do. Rules will not cause people to do right. What causes people to do right is inside them. It is part of who they are, what they have come to believe, what they act out in that belief. And if you believe Jesus is the Son of God, if you believe that he came to lead us to the newness and wonderfulness of full creation and full completeness, then we connect to that. I have done many a sermon through the years. I have tried my best to say, look, if you're living as a Christian for the reasons of rules, if all you're doing is trying to keep the 10 Commandments, you're missing the whole point. You're missing what God has to offer. Because what he's offering through Jesus is a personal connection, an ability to be in relationship with him. And when you're in relationship with God, things change. Things inside change. Things that I might have been willing to do, I won't do because of that relationship. Not because of the rules, not because I'm afraid, not because I'm better even than anyone else, merely because you do right because it is right. And wrong is never right. We live with a very simple concept as Christians. We're to love God with all our heart, all our soul, all our mind, all our strength. And then we're to love other people as ourselves. We know when we violate that. We can feel it. We don't have to be told, really. We know that once we know it. Once we've experienced it, once we understand it, we know it. I'm going to offer you a little trick. I try this a lot. I need to try it a lot. Not always successful. If you ever have any doubt about what you're about to say or what you're about to do is the right thing, say this: Lord, what I'm about to say or what I'm about to do is my way of thanking you for Jesus Christ. I'm here as a witness to him, and what I'm about to say or do reflects my thanksgiving. I assure you, if you take that seriously, there are certain things you won't do. There are certain things you won't say. There are certain actions that you cannot take because you know in your heart that they're wrong. And wrong is never right. Amen.